We're spending half the episode talking about white men, so prepare yourself. Hello and welcome to Queen Things, the show where we discuss the things that matter to us queens, because if it matters to us, it matters. I'm your host, KJ Miller. I'm a founder, a lecturer, a content creator, and today on the show, we are talking about Justin Bieber. We are. He just headlined Coachella, and I had some thoughts that I shared over on TikTok and Instagram that went pretty viral. And, you know, there are people who agree with me, people who disagree with me. And I just want to expound on my thoughts here, as I sometimes like to do. We're going to talk about him. The other white man we're going to talk about is an influencer named Bran Flakezz. He's been catching heat recently, also due to Coachella. Coachella has white people in a bit of a chokehold right now. And, you know, I am an expert and investigator when it comes to white culture. So here I am on the sidelines. Will I ever go to Coachella? Never say never. Never say never. It doesn't look likely, though. Anywho, we're going to be talking about both of them. We're going to touch on Sabrina a little bit as well. She also made some Coachella headlines. The ones I'm talking about were not good ones. However, she also got a lot of good headlines for Coachella. That's not what I'm going to be talking about, though. What else? Oh, well, we might touch on Alex Cooper and Alix Earle. I've already basically said what I needed to say on socials, but we might expound further. Like I said, I guess it's a white news episode. So let's get into it. Now, before I even jump into the Justin Bieber of it all, can I just say, white people, watching your videos of how you experience Coachella has just really been an experience for me. I continue to be amazed at just how different we are. You know, it feels like not the thing you're supposed to say. You're supposed to say when you do the digging, you realize how similar we are. And I'm sure we are similar in many ways. But when it comes to things like music festivals, I think we're very different. All I've seen are various camping videos, not one, and I do mean this, not one of the Coachella camping videos I have seen has featured a Black person. When I talk about camping, I'm talking about the people setting up their canopies and their drapes and their cars, putting out the flat bed of their truck, putting an air mattress on the truck, bringing portable showers. And that is such a strong word to use for what I have seen y'all set up. Shower feels very strong, okay? Because what I am seeing is people with huge buckets of water and then what looks like a shower handle that you have to manually manipulate to spray the water on yourself. And by the way, where is the water coming from that's in this huge bucket? It can't possibly be hot. I don't know where y'all are getting hot shower water from in this bucket. And if it was hot when you fill the bucket up, is it still hot when you get it back to your campsite? Can't be. It can't be. So shower again feels strong, but I've seen the portable showers. I have seen the portable toilets, which again is a strong word to use because a toilet has a flushing function. What these people have is, again, basically a bucket with a toilet seat on top of it. So maybe when you sit upon it, it feels a little bit like a toilet. But then what they're doing, I've learned, is after they do whatever their business is they need to do, they're then taking the trash bag that's underneath them and collecting it and then walking it over to, I guess, the trash cans of Coachella. I cannot describe to you how unbelievable this all is to me, that people are spending thousands of dollars to do this, because there's no easy way to get to Coachella, mind you. All right. Even if you live nearby, first of all, you can't live nearby. It's the desert. So even if you live somewhere in the state of California, this is a very big thing to get yourself to this desert. And most of the people there don't live in California. So people are spending so much money to get there, to buy all of the various things that they need to set up. And mind you, a lot of the videos that I am being served of people camping at Coachella and we'll try and include a couple links just in case you have not seen. The videos I have seen, people are describing this as their like luxury setup. People are referring to various areas of their tiny little camp space as the glam room. Let me tell you what they mean by that. What they mean by that is they have put up a little crate or two, put a little mirror like the one I have here on my desk, one of those up on that crate, and then they have some stackable shelves with their makeup, and that is what they are referring to as the glam room. It just and by the way, people are referring to this as like their luxury setup. People are bragging about, I got 2 campsites this year, so I'm looking at 2. They're like, I got an extra huge space. Mind you, the extra huge space fits a full-size bed, the quote-unquote glam room, and a little bit of walking space for you to change clothes. Whew. This is how we differ, okay? I just cannot imagine spending thousands of dollars to do this, to go take myself to a desert, to use the bathroom into a bucket, to shower out of a bucket. We're just different. Shout out to all of y'all who went, who loved it. I mean, a lot of these videos I was seeing as well were people saying they've been doing this for years. They love Coachella. They come back every year. They camp at Coachella. It's so fun. It's a vibe. And I love that for y'all. I can't tell you how different we are. I cannot describe to you how different we are, but God bless it. That's the camping portion. Let's get into Bieber. Now, if you didn't see my take, I'll include a clip, but it was actually a very short take. What I said was, if anyone ever doubts us when we say, we being Black women, when we say that we have to work twice as hard to get half as far, just show them a clip of Beyonce's Coachella performance, followed directly by a clip of Justin Bieber's Coachella performance, and then come back and say to me with a straight face, we don't have to work twice as hard to get half as far. I just think, and I'm going to expound upon this because there were a lot of people who hopped up into my comment section to let me know that actually what Justin did, given everything he's been through, is so brilliant and so vulnerable. And this is what his true fans want to see from him. The thing that I think is somehow being missed in this conversation is that what I'm talking about is input, and what most of y'all are talking about is output. Okay? If you enjoyed his performance, you enjoyed the minimalism of it. You enjoyed seeing him in rain boots and a hoodie for 90 minutes. You enjoyed that there were almost no other people on stage with him for almost the entire show. You enjoyed watching him do his YouTube karaoke sing-along. If you enjoyed all of that, first of all, I'm very happy for you because I think that means he will never disappoint you. You will never see a performance from Justin Bieber that disappoints you. And that is fantastic if you are a Justin Bieber fan. Also, if all of it worked for you, that is fantastic. Again, you're a fan. He put on a performance you liked. That's fantastic. That's the output. What I'm talking about when I made my video and said what I said is input. Because what you can't tell me, despite everything, you loved it, you thought it was great, he was traumatized, this was him stripping back and bearing his soul and being vulnerable and all of that. If I accept all of that as fact, what you can't tell me is that the level of effort that he input, okay, anywhere comes close to the level of effort that Beyonce input into her performance. We're talking about orders of magnitude of difference. That is the point that I'm making, and that someone like a Beyonce, despite being the greatest living performer of our time, and I would argue the greatest performer of all time, that's my opinion. I'm not saying it's a fact, that's my opinion. The fact is, she could not get away with the level of input that Justin Bieber did. She couldn't, despite being the most winningest Grammy winner of all time, despite being, the greatest pop artist of the century, according to Billboard, despite all of her accolades, everything that she's done. If she gave us a performance with that level of input, that level of effort, nobody would be happy about that. That is what I'm talking about. There is just such a big difference in the level of effort. Just given who Justin Bieber is, given his musical prowess, his musical knowledge and experience, if I had to estimate how long it took to pull that performance together, generously, I would say a month. That is my generous estimate, because do I believe he could have pulled it together in a week? Yes. Yes, I do. But I will generously give him a month's worth of time that it would take to put that performance together. And I think spending 1 month, and again, that is generous, spending 1 month to prep for a performance that is going to be viewed globally, and that people are spending thousands of dollars to come and see. People are camping in deserts and pooping into buckets in order to see, is wild to me. That being good enough for you, I love it for you, but it's wild to me, okay? I'm talking about input. I'm not talking about output. The fact that the output worked for you is fantastic, but I'm talking about input. And I do not think we can argue that that was a low effort performance. I don't see how we could argue anything else. Now, all of that said, and I stand by all of it, all of that said, there were some bright spots, okay? Number one, I think Justin sounded amazing. I really do. I've said it before. He's grown into his voice. I find his voice to be quite soothing isn't the word I'm going for, but velvety. I like it when I hear it, and I recognize it pretty much immediately when I hear it. And I will say did I watch the whole 90 minutes? No, I did not, but I actually did watch a lot of this performance from my perspective. And I went to find the best clips, the songs that people were saying were the best or their favorite moments. I watched all of those. And I will say, to me, the best moments were when he was singing songs from Swag. That's when, to me, it felt like he was the most connected with the music and the most connected with the audience, despite the fact that even for some of that, he was, not really looking at people or at the camera. He would sort of tune in and then tune out and then pace around the stage and kind of this what I'm calling kind of like a duck march. Now, part of what made it appear kind of like a duck march, I think, was those big ass rain boots. But he was sort of waddling side to side all over the stage. Stage presence, not sure. But the moments where he really would connect and look into the camera, look into the audience, address the audience, and just say Coachella, those were, I think, the best moments where it really did feel connected for me. And I felt like that happened a lot while he was singing songs specifically from Swag. So that was a bright spot for me. His voice was a bright spot for me. And even the YouTube piece, which, yes, I did clown, even the YouTube piece as a moment, I think is fun. Now, he did the lowest effort possible version of that bit, which, again, for me as a fan, I'd be a little upset about, because there's a high effort version of that bit that you could absolutely do. You could, instead of him being there with a MacBook and his hoodie, slowly, one letter tapping each song, we could have just queued up each song in the background and then actually had a performance to each song, or, done a melody with Baby and Beauty and the Beat and blah, blah, blah. Have a few dancers come out. You can afford it. You got paid $10 million. Have a couple dancers come out and do this with you. Make it a moment. Make it a spectacle. That would be the high effort version of that bit. He did the lowest possible effort version of that bit, yet and still it is kind of delighting to see him sing a song that you remember from 20 years ago. That is still kind of delighting. I get it as a bit. It felt like the lowest effort version of it he could possibly do. Are there any other bright spots? Listen, everything that he has been through, which y'all have reminded me about many, many times. Although I will say, what are the specifics of his trauma? You know, I actually don't know, and no one's talking about the specifics. Everyone's just talking about in general how traumatizing it was for him to grow up in this industry because he got signed when he was a teenager, 14 or 15 or something like that, which is true for Taylor and is true for Beyonce and is true for Brandy and is true for Monica and was, I think, true for Whitney. And so it can't just be that. Maybe it is, but like, what are the specifics? I actually have not heard people talk about the specifics of his trauma, other than that it is very difficult to enter into this industry as a child or you know, as a teenager. And it is. Other than that, I don't know. However, I'm fully willing to take your word for it that he went through a lot of trauma. And given that trauma, the fact that he was able to get up there and headline this show and, you know, do this full set, I'm happy for him. I'm happy about that. That in itself, I guess, is also a bright spot. But I would just like to underscore the point I was making that I do stand by is that this was an extremely low effort performance that would not be accepted from any Black woman, including the most prolific and winningest Black woman artist in history. And I think that that's kind of shitty. But if it works for you, it works for you. Moving on to another white man, let's talk about Bran Flakezz. This is a creator named Bran. I don't follow him, but I get served a lot of his content on TikTok. It's Bran_Flakezz on TikTok. And he is someone whose content I have always enjoyed. I find his content to be funny, to be relatable. You know, it's mostly those talking head style videos, the kind that I do. He has a thought, he shares it on camera, is kind of how he does TikTok, and I relate. He had a series last year. He lives in Philly, or at least he did. I think he still does. And he was trying different Philly restaurants owned by Black women, and that importantly that were kind of struggling. And so he was getting a lot of attention on these Black-owned restaurants, which I love to see that. I also love to see people supporting Philly. Y'all know I lived there for several years. I love Philly. But, you know, he also is liberal. I have seen him speak up on, you know, many topics about, you know, the LGBT community, Black community, you know, like I do consider him to be an ally. Okay, so the reason he got into trouble at Coachella was because he went on a brand trip sponsored by Starbucks. And if you didn't know, a lot of people were boycotting Starbucks last year because of their stance, I believe, on like Israel and Palestine. I don't know all the ins and outs. I'm sorry. And I didn't feel like honestly going back down that rabbit hole. But generally speaking, people were not happy with their stance on it. Bran, however, importantly, never said he was boycotting Starbucks. And so him popping up on this brand trip was not directly hypocritical to anything he had said about this corporation. However, in a lot of people's eyes, because he is liberal, because he is progressive, because he has spoken up about various issues, including, I believe, Palestine, this felt like him being a hypocrite. This felt like him going back on his morals. And, you know, essentially, as soon as a check was involved, not caring about an issue that we all believed him to care about is the critique. He then made a response video once he saw all this critique coming in and basically said, well, first of all, I've never said that I was boycotting Starbucks. Second of all, pretty much every major corporation has ties to this administration and therefore ties to this administration's stance on Israel. So are we all boycotting Amazon? Are we all boycotting Coca-Cola? You know, are we all boycotting Apple? We're throwing away our iPhones. He was like, because if we're not holding the line for every corporation, how is it that you can be this upset about me for doing this deal with Starbucks? Basically, I'm paraphrasing, we'll include the link. And I'm actually watching it back now. The brands he specifically calls out that have involvement in or ties to Israel are Coca-Cola, Google, Amazon, Airbnb, and Apple. And so after he puts up the names of those corporations that have ties to Israel. He says, if you can confidently say that you do not use or support any of those brands, Amazon, Apple, Airbnb, whatever, then you're free to rip me apart in the comments. He's like, but basically people have to live, right? Like we can't expect people to not live, to not go about their day, to not use certain services or certain brands or certain organizations, whatever. Okay. Now, people in the comments predictably are not happy with that argument. I will read a few of the comments here. This is from someone called Keep It Frank. This argument is insane. You can't compare conglomerates that own the infrastructure of everyday needs to you just wanting to go on a brand trip. We don't have a choice in who owns the internet or phone market or banking systems. You do have a choice about where you buy your coffee or who you choose to go on brand trips with. Now, that's an interesting thing to say, since the companies he cited, I would argue you do have a choice, many of them. Like he cited Apple, but you don't have to buy an iPhone, right? He cited Amazon, but you don't have to order from Amazon. He cited Coca-Cola, but you could drink Pepsi. So I get what this person is saying, but for the specific, I mean, he cited Airbnb. It's like, girl, you could stay at the Marriott. For this, I get what this person is saying, but I feel like Bran actually did a good job of choosing the companies that he chose. I'm sure he could have put far more up on the screen, because I would argue most of those, you actually very much do have a choice in whether or not you use them. But basically, I also see what this person is saying, like, okay, but you're talking about the things I do need to use for my everyday life, my phone, the internet. But what you did was go on a brand trip you didn't need to go on, right? Like you could have just afforded to go to Coachella. If what you wanted was to go to Coachella, you didn't need Starbucks to do it. You could have just paid for your own ticket. He's made a lot of money. That's actually another thing he talks about, is how much money he makes via doing content creation. And that's a valid point. The counterpoint to that is people saying things like this. This is from someone named Sarah, saying the people canceling you are the same reason why Kamala lost. Everyone is soft and the bigger picture has been ignored. And Ryan Merritt says, we have to stop trying to cancel everyone. Brandon's content has uplifted so many small businesses in Philly. He's brought attention to so many great causes, which I mentioned in the beginning. So the reason I wanted to touch on this is because, I actually don't talk about politics too much or in too much depth on this podcast, because this podcast for me is a light in a dark, dark world. Politics is very dark. And so while I certainly don't ignore it, I'm a Black woman, I don't have the luxury of that. This isn't the space where I like to talk about it or consume it. I do that other places. However, the reason I wanted to bring this up is because as a content creator myself, I think it's relevant to me. The standards we are holding creators to, particularly creators like myself who are liberal and who do very much identify as progressive, not leftist, and we'll talk about why, but as progressive. And I just think, I guess I'll just come out and say, I don't think brand should be canceled for this Starbucks brand trip. I don't. I will also come out and say I have consumed Starbucks in the last year. First of all, my daughter is really into their cake pops. So that's number one. Number two, sometimes I want a caramel macchiato. Okay. So I also can't hold him to a standard I'm not holding myself. That would be hypocritical. So I want to come out and say that. And I do agree with the sentiment that things like this, I think, are why Kamala lost. Not all of the reason why. I want to be very clear. But I do feel like there is just this tendency to take such a hard line that I don't know how people are supposed to walk this line. And I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that we live in an extremely capitalist society. I am fairly anti-capitalism, but I live under capitalism's chokehold. Therefore, I have to do the things that capitalism requires to succeed, to eat, to feed myself and my family, to pay the mortgage on this house. these are things that I have to do. I have to be concerned not only with making money, but making more money so I can have more opportunities, so I can put more money away for my daughter's college fund, so that she can have what my parents were able to give to me, which was they helped, me and my husband on our first down payment. They didn't pay the whole thing. Let me be clear. Okay. But they did help. And I'd like to be able to do that for her. My parents also completely paid for my college. I graduated from college debt-free. That's something my husband and I want to do for my daughter. These are things that, because these are goals of ours, I can't say, oh, capitalism is unethical and therefore I'm out. That's not a luxury any of us have. And so I think the point that Bran made is a good one, which is, if you can't say that your hands are 100% clean as it relates to dealing with corporations that have stances you disagree with, if your hands aren't 100% clean, how is it that you're holding my feet to the fire because my hands aren't either, right? This is just sort of the world we live in. And yes, a brand trip is not a necessity, okay? It is not a necessity, but this is his job. This is how he makes money. My job is selling beauty products. Some of you might argue makeup is frivolous and that is not a good contribution to the world. Okay, but it's how I feed my kid, so it's what I'm doing, right? And I think being so staunch about these things, I think it doesn't help us. And, that is not a stance I think a lot of people are going to love, but hopefully it's also not a stance that is going to be that surprising to you coming from me. I've always said I am a progressive, but I'm also a pragmatist, which is why I never had any issue supporting Kamala, not one issue supporting Kamala, because my options were her or Trump. Those were my actual, true, real options. If my options next go round are Gavin Newsom and Trump again, because we don't care about the Constitution anymore, or, JD Vance, probably a bit more likely, I'm choosing Newsom. Not because I think he's fantastic, not because I think he's, some progressive, ideal visionary, but because I'm a pragmatist and I have got to do what I believe is in the best interest of my family and my country and Black people. I've got to do all of that with the options I have in front of me. And so voting for Kamala was not a difficult choice for me. Also, I like Kamala Harris. I just want to say that. I feel like a lot of Democrats get off on saying like, I voted for her because I had to. No, I voted for her because I had to and because I like her. That feels like a thing I should say. Anyway, I am a pragmatist. Okay. And so I'm not going to boycott every single company that has ties to Israel because every single company has ties to Israel. Not every, but most of these major corporations do. That would be, I think, an untenable ask. And I also am not going to boycott every single company that has donated money to Republicans. I don't like that they've done it, but I have to live a life. I think when we start asking things like that of people, of creators, we're essentially asking them to do something most of us can't actually do in our everyday lives. And I just don't know that that's fair. So anyway, that's all a very long-winded way of saying on this particular issue, I tend to side with Bran. I don't like to publicly side with white men too much. So let me be clear on this particular thing, not in all things. I'm not giving this man a blank slate. But on this particular thing, yeah, I'm all right with Bran. And that concludes the white male portion of this podcast. That was a lot for me. That was like 30 good minutes. Let's get to the ladies, starting with Sabrina Carpenter. Now, as I said, she got some good headlines for Coachella for her performance, but she also got some backlash because during her set, while it was her acoustic set, she was sort of sat down at the piano about to play. Someone in the audience did Zaruta. I know I am not pronouncing it exactly right. I'm not rolling the R in the right way, but this is like a high-pitched sort of trill that's very common in a number of Middle Eastern cultures for people to do during celebrations. I think I've also read that sometimes it's something that's done just in large gatherings, even if it's not a celebration. There are a lot of different times where you will do it, but celebrations, is one of those times. Okay, and so the woman in the audience is doing this, and she must be very, very close to the front because Sabrina can hear her. And Sabrina says, "What is that? Is that yodeling?" And the woman says, "No, it's Arab. It's a celebration." And she says, "It's my culture." And Sabrina's like, "It's your culture? I don't like it. It's weird." Now, she has since come out and issued, I guess you could call it an apology on Twitter, but she still refers to it. She still refers to yodeling in the apology. The apology reads, "My apologies. I didn't see this person with my eyes and couldn't hear clearly. My reaction was pure confusion, sarcasm, and not ill-intended. Could have handled it better. Now I know what Zagruta is. I welcome all cheers and yodels from here on out." Okay. First of all, I think to once again call out yodeling when it wasn't yodeling and she made that clear and you calling it yodeling was essentially dismissing her. To refer to it again in the tweet, bad form. And I don't know. Here's the thing. There are a lot of people saying like, this isn't a big deal. Like, she clearly couldn't see. She was in the middle of a performance. Like, she was trying to be sarcastic, but there was no harm intended. And while I don't think there was harm intended, you guys know what I'm going to say. Impact over intent. We've talked about it before. For you to hear the person say, "This is my culture," and for your response to be, "Your culture is yodeling," I don't like it. It's weird. For that to be your natural inclination, when you have heard someone directly say, "This thing I'm doing is a cultural thing," that does feel icky to me. It really does. I've seen people say it feels very mean girl energy to them. And it might be that, but to me, it just reads as ignorant. It just would never be, it never would be my response to someone telling me something is important to them culturally. "Hey, this is my culture." Ew, I don't like it. Weird. Like that is, for that to be your response just feels like, do you not have people in your life who come from different places and who have different cultures than you? Like, is it that foreign of a concept that someone could be doing something fully foreign to you that you've never heard before, but that can be a perfectly valid thing for them to be doing? Like, it just, the fact that was her first response, I think is somewhat telling, and if it is just, she's sarcastic, I will say that was one of the things I disliked most about her latest album. The whole thing felt sarcastic. And, actually my husband and I spoke about this at length. Sarcasm as your main personality trait is, I think, very hard to vibe with. Very hard to vibe with. And I can be sarcastic. We all can. But as your primary personality trait, it just feels like a wall. It feels like nothing is serious. Don't take anything I'm saying seriously. And I made this point. The whole album almost felt like a joke. It almost felt like, am I supposed to be laughing? Is this a comedy set? Or am I supposed to be vibing? It feels walled off. It feels like there's a lack of vulnerability. It feels like I can't get to know you authentically. It feels impenetrable. And that was, for me, the vibe of her entire album. And now I am realizing maybe just her entire vibe. And I don't know. It sours me a little bit on Sabrina. Not fully. I'm still looking forward to seeing what her next album is, her next iteration is, because I do think she's very talented. But I think the fact that was her first reaction to being told that a sound she had never heard or wasn't familiar with was a part of someone's culture, it doesn't give me a ton of hope, just like in her as a person. But we'll see. I'm not writing her off. I just think it's telling. While we're on the subject of white women, I do have to briefly mention Amanda Batula. I know we're going on 3 weeks of talking about this woman. Here's what I have to say. She posted, it's the L that keeps on Lling. She posted to her Instagram a little message talking about, guys, I know this situation is so serious and I'm taking it seriously, but I need to try to get back to some sense of normalcy. Okay. She posted that to her Instagram stories. Not 24 hours later, we see her at some dumb dive bar with West and a group of friends wearing just the grungiest looking outfit you've ever seen. And it just was like, girl, get up. My God, this is what you felt the need to announce to the world. You finally, after, weeks of silence, what you wanted to announce to us was that it is so important to you to go do tequila shots on the Lower East Side with West Wilson. My God, you keep taking these hits. You have now been unfollowed by Rihanna. West Wilson is worth that? Rihanna looking at you like you're the scum of the earth? Oh, Lord and Jesus, may it never happen to me. You've been unfollowed by Rihanna. You're getting dragged left, right, and center on the internet. Every single Watch What Happens Live guest that I have seen since this announcement has been quick to say just how Team Ciara they are, how much they are on Ciara's side. I'm talking about people who I did not even knew anything about Summer House are hopping up to make it very clear they don't like you. You are wrong. And when you finally decide to say something to the public, it's a, hey guys, I want to go out with my boyfriend. Yuck. I thought at least when she posted that, it was the next thing we were going to see from her was some kind of brand partnership. No, the next thing we see is you in an ugly outfit with West doing shots. Oh, girl. Get up. Really and truly, when Ciara said you need to marry him at this point, I agree with her. At this point, y'all need to get married. That's the only way the only way through this in my mind is the Brangelina route. You got to get married. You got to have about 7 kids. Then you have to start dedicating your entire life to philanthropy. And then maybe people will get up off this Amanda hate train. Because girl, yikes. And let me just say, her outfit wasn't that ugly. That was mean. That was mean and unnecessary. It wasn't the world's ugliest outfit. It just looked very grungy. She's just been very grungy recently. And it just felt like, why is this what you needed the Instagram iOS release for? Like this? But that was mean, okay? Her outfit wasn't that bad. Okay, the final thing that I'm going to talk about here is this Alix Earle drama. I did make a TikTok about it. Basically, if you haven't heard, Alix Earle has been sneak dissing Alex Cooper online, and Alex Cooper came out and said, no, you need to get specific. If there is something that happened between us that has upset you, be specific about what it is, because there's no NDA, there's nothing stopping you, and I'm tired of this fake beef, okay? And I personally respected Alex Cooper for naming her, not trying to sneak diss, just saying, no, don't talk about it, be about it. I have respect for her for that. And I will also just say, the nature of their relationship when it broke down was effectively boss-employee, because Alix Earle was signed to Alex Cooper's network. So effectively, Alex Cooper is Alix Earle's boss in that moment. So the fact that Alex Cooper has not come out and, just proactively said anything about Alix Earle, to me makes all the sense in the world. Because if you're my employee and I just come out throwing punches and talking shit about you, the liability for me is far greater than in the reverse, right? Because now there's an element of, hostile work environment, so on and so forth. Like, it is a bigger liability. And also it just looks unprofessional. Even if the employee was in the wrong for a million different reasons, if I get online and start talking shit about that person unprovoked, I look unprofessional, right? So to me, it makes all the sense in the world that regardless of what this drama is, Alix Cooper hasn't said anything about it, hasn't alluded to it, because as the employer in this situation, that would not make sense. However, it also makes sense to me that she's now saying, listen, you are essentially implying that all of these nefarious dealings were done based on the things you're reposting and based on the comments that you're liking. Now this is a threat to my business and to my reputation. So if you're going to imply it, then be explicit about it. That to me, again, makes sense. She's simply saying, if you're saying that there's a there, then clue us all in so that I can address it, in real time. I don't want to be out here saying things unprovoked, but if you're going to bring it up, then give me the opportunity to actually address it, because I can't address these nothing wisps, gasps, rumors. I can't address that. There's nothing for me to say about that. So that makes sense to me. All that said, as the time of this recording, it's 10 a.m. on a Wednesday. She has not said anything, Alix Earle. She said that she would. She responded to, in the comments section to Alix Cooper's post saying, okay, on it, making it sound like I'm going to do it. But that was Monday. It's now Wednesday. We have nothing. So I don't know. How long does it take to put a little TikTok together? As far as I know, Alix Earle drops 6 TikToks a day. So it's a little confusing that we don't have a response yet. But as it stands right now, with the limited information that I have, I am currently leaning towards supporting Alix Cooper, because I don't see any reason not to right now. Now, we'll see what comes to light. And to be clear, I'm not a fan of either of these women. I'm just a fan of mess, as you all know. So we'll see. And that's all we've got for this week, everybody. It was a lot of white news, a lot of white people news. Y'all got a lot going on. Something about Coachella has a lot going on in the air. Anyway, I've enjoyed it, and I'll see you next week.